Hello, my name is Jacob, and I'm a Norse Pagan, and welcome back to the Wisdom of Odin. Today we are exploring a little bit more of Europe and a little bit more of Viking history. And so I'm on an island that you can only get to at certain points in the day because the road floods over. And so we are trapped on this island for 5 hours. Now, this island probably would not be very well known if it wasn't for a certain TV show, but historically this island is very important, especially to a lot of people who are Viking enthusiasts. And that is because I am on the island of Lindisfarne, which is the first place recorded, or at least recorded as significant, that the Vikings raided here in England in 793. So there's a few things on this island I want to show you and a few things I want to talk about. But the first thing I'm going to head to is actually the Lindisfarne Castle, because it's cool and because our tickets said that we had to go there early. But that's the castle in the distance. Really excited to see it, really excited to talk to you about it, and really excited to show you the island of Lindisfarne. Well, actually, I think it's the island of Holy Island, but we'll call it Lindisfarne, because you know what that is. But anyways, let us continue down the path and show you Lindisfarne, the castle here, the monastery, and talk about the history and maybe what that could mean for us today. It is really windy here, so I'm going to try my best, but just bear with me through this video, but I'm really excited to show you all of this. All right, I'm standing in the middle of the field in front of the castle. We just got done with the tour. It's very windy, so I'm going to try to talk as fast as I can. So I do think it's worth mentioning, if you are here, to definitely visit this. It's got a really fascinating and interesting history. Obviously, this castle was not around during the Viking Age, but at the same time, it is really cool, and just history is really fun. So it was barely involved in any wars and conflicts. It was slightly captured during the Jacobite Rebellion, and then it was also used, I think, in one conflict. It fired one cannon. So for over 300 years, this thing just stood here and basically did absolutely nothing. So eventually it was decommissioned after the Crimean War in the 1800s, which is when it was then purchased by a man named Hudson, who was just really wealthy, and he had parties here. But he was quite eccentric, and so he basically moved in this young celloist who was engaged to him for some time, and then eventually wasn't. And then she lived here and played private shows, and they had private parties, lavish parties with lots of good food. But the thing that was interesting is the guests would always complain about the fact that they were here on this very windy and lonely island, where they constantly had to listen to the wind, which is very true because we were inside and constantly the wind is blowing on the inside and you can hear it. And you imagine what it's like when it's raining or when it gets cold here, and you are kind of trapped here during certain points in the day. Now, obviously, it's not owned privately anymore. It's part of the British Trust, and you can tour it if you wish. Really cool. One of the first castles I've ever toured. Absolutely gorgeous. Had a lot of fun. But now we're going to get to the main content of this video, which is showing you Lindisfarne and reflecting on what it would have been like being a monk here when it was getting raided in 793.
In this year fierce, foreboding omens came over the land of the Northumbrians, and the wretched people shook. There was excessive whirlwinds, lightning, and fiery dragons were seen flying in the sky. These signs were followed by a great famine, and little after those, the same year on the 6th Ides of January, the ravaging of wretched heathen men destroyed God's church at Lindisfarne. Never before has such terror appeared in Britain as we have suffered from a pagan race. The heathens poured out the blood of saints around the altar, and trampled on the bodies of saints in the temple of God, like dung in the streets.
So those two quotes I just played for you at the beginning of this section are two of the accounts that we have of the Lindisfarne raid. These accounts are actually why the Viking Age is considered to have started now. Now, an important note on that, just because modern historians say this is the start of the Viking Age doesn't mean they sat down and said this is the beginning of the Viking Age. That's not how history works. It just was the beginning of the time period where Vikings began to raid across England. And that's really what this place is known for. It's really why I'm here. It's really why I wanted to see this ocean and see the sea, is because at some point 1300 years ago, Viking ships came up this bay and raided over here. Now, the cathedral that was here, the church that was here, it was not made of anything besides wood, and so there's actually no remaining parts of the original raiding site. In fact, they don't actually know officially where it was. However, this place does have a natural bay behind me here, which is one of the reasons it was prime for raiding, and that was one of the reasons the monks chose it as well. The monks wanted seclusion, they wanted a bay, and they literally chose the island that would eventually become their downfall. Now, the site is very important to the English culture and English heritage, specifically Christianity, because this is the site that Christianity is said to have spread across England, or the official nail in the coffin for traditional pagan beliefs. So the site is twofold. To the Christians, this is where like Celtic paganism, Welsh paganism, Pictish paganism, all that stuff ended, but it's also the place where Vikings came in and raided. So there's a lot of things going on here. I don't know how much more information I'm going to get out of the actual priory itself in the museum, but actually sitting here, picturing what it would have been like to see Viking ships sailing up this bay is the most amazing part of this, and it's really invigorating to see. And boy, they must have really been going fast, because the wind really does not stop here. But really amazing to see this, really amazing to picture what it would have been like. Well, not if I was from the monk's perspective, but really just an intimidating thought and an intimidating image. Whew! All right, I think I'm going to head to the Lindisfarne now and get out of the wind. But yeah, this is really cool, and I hope you're enjoying the views of the castle in the background, the views of the ocean, and all of this. All right, off we go. So I don't want to spend too much time on the monastery itself, because it is a monastery, and the one here isn't even the one that was here during the Viking raids in 793. This wasn't added until much after the Viking Age, and added to after that, and then eventually was decommissioned after King Henry VIII removed many of the priories across England. And so the history here is very Christian, and we did go into the museum here as well, and we were like, maybe there'll be a nice section on the Viking raids. And there really wasn't, and I guess we shouldn't be surprised by that. Like, there was a thing in the intro basically saying, like, oh yes, this place was raided by murderous Vikings and things like that. And so this isn't a Viking World Heritage Site by any means. This is an English World Heritage Site, which is okay. It's perfectly okay for that to exist. It's perfectly okay for them to have historical centers for them. But of course, we go into there and we're like, where's the pagan stuff? And we began to look around, and then there it was on the floor and on a brief placard. And there was like one artifact that was interesting. It was like a depiction of Viking raiders, and also like a reference to like the end times, the Christian apocalypse being combined with the Vikings. So there wasn't too much of the positive Vikings in there. There was this funny bit I'll show you here real quick about some inconsistencies in history that I always find interesting.
An example of why history is whack sometime. Talking about Osvith, I guess a nun that was murdered at Lindisfarne. The raid at Lindisfarne happened in 793, and yet right here it says she was murdered by Vikings in the year 700 at Lindisfarne. History is confusing sometimes.
So yes, that really makes you scratch your head. It's like, wait a second, the Viking Age didn't start till 793, and yet right here it says this woman was killed by Vikings in the early 700s. What's going on here? And that really is the lesson of this place, is yes, this is the official beginning of the Viking Age, but that doesn't mean they magically didn't exist. The people that would become the Vikings during the Viking Age existed just as long as the rest of humanity before then, and that's what I really try to focus on in my research and in my personal practice, is what we know before the Viking Age, because the Viking Age was the end of the religious practices, because as soon as they started invading and spreading out, they came more into contact with Christianity, which just eventually led to the religion disappearing and Christianity taking over. So Lindisfarne really marks the beginning of the end of the religion practiced by the Vikings, even though it actually starts the official Viking Age, which is just really interesting. And so to actually stand here and look at it all and understand that this is where it all began is really cool. So I do have one more thing I kind of want to mention a little bit here, just because I think it is one of the reasons many people would even know what Lindisfarne is. So the last thing I want to bring up here is the fact that many people, I'm not going to say all Norse pagans or Viking enthusiasts, but many people only know Lindisfarne from the Vikings TV show from History Channel from a few years ago. I mean, that was where a lot of my conceptions came from. A lot of media drives our reality in our minds. We're like, oh, well, I saw it on the Vikings TV show, that's how it happens. And that's why I wanted to come here, to see with my own eyes and to share it with you so you could kind of see it with your own eyes, to see that this is Lindisfarne, but not really, because this isn't even the real Lindisfarne. This happened 300 years, 400 years after the Viking Age started. The real church that was burned down by the Vikings was somewhere around here, maybe over there, but we just don't know. So history is often less dramatic than real life. Yes, monks were murdered here. Yes, things were stolen here. Yes, a Viking age officially started here. But life is, you know, experiencing life with your own eyes really changes your perception. So, you know, when you think about Lindisfarne, I'd rather you think about this video, what you saw here, than what you saw on the Vikings TV show, because that is more close to reality. So anytime that you're thinking, you know, you're feeling disconnected from this faith, that you're not living up to some kind of potential, it's probably because you have this fantastical idea of what reality is, when really the Viking age was not as just, I don't know, not as explosive of what we've been shown on TV. And that really does take seeing things with your own eyes and experiencing life. So yes, that is why this video exists. I really hope you enjoyed it though. I really hope you enjoyed seeing these things, seeing the castle, because history is important and the history here is really fascinating. And I'm getting so tired because the wind has been so strong. But thank you so much for joining me here in England, in Northumbria, talking about Lindisfarne, the beginning of the Viking Age, and important bits of history that I find just so fascinating. Thank you so very much, and until the hall, Skull.